Welcome to Rick's Corner. I got Jerry Brainum back. We're going to talk today about creatine, right?
Yes.
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 Creatine.
Marv Albert. Yes.
There's a lot of different types of creatine. There's a few types, and you want to take what's best for you. The biggest complaint I hear from people, it upsets my stomach.
Right.
And it does to a lot of people.
Oh, and I'll tell you why. Because a lot of people don't realize creatine is an amino acid byproduct. It's made from 3 amino acids: arginine, glycine, and methionine. Now, why is that important? When you take free amino acids, there's what they call an osmotic effect. You know, when you take it orally, I mean, the water is drawn to your gut. Now, creatine is a very kind of concentrated amino acid product. If you don't take it with enough fluid, water or whatever, what's happened is the water is going to be drawn to the gut, and it's going to cause a gastrointestinal distress, what you feel is a bad cramping effect. So the cure to that, there's actually 2 cures. The first cure is to ensure, I would say maybe at least 8 ounces of water with each, let's say 5, that's a teaspoon, 5-gram dose of creatine.
Yeah.
And the other thing, the other possible option, there's 2 forms of creatine that might be a benefit to people that tend to get cramps of creatine. One of them is called micronized creatine. And what that simply means is that the creatine granules, if you want to call them, are very small. They're made very, very small. Because of that, there's less of an osmotic effect. So a lot of people can take that micronized creatine, and other than that, the creatine's the same. It's not like the creatine itself is any better.
What about crealkaline?
I'll tell you that in a second. But
Okay.
but the thing is, the other type is called creatine nitrate, and a couple of companies are selling that. And I have I'd say yes and no on that. Yes, because it requires less water for metabolism, right?
Yeah.
But no, because there's no real solid. They just came out with a research just about a month ago showing that it's safe, because there was a question about it, that it could be a little bit dangerous.
Yes, I know.
But now they know it's not dangerous. But here's the part that bothered me. It's a lot more expensive than the plain old creatine, which is creatine monohydrate. Mm-hmm. That's the standard basic creatine. Mm-hmm. This stuff is about 5-6 times more expensive. Is it any better as far as producing ergogenic effects? No. So no. So the thing is, I mean, if you want to try it and and it helps, and you have that really bad cramping effect, then maybe it's worth it for you to take it. But don't take it under the notion that it's a superior form of creatine, because I'll give you a flat statement, folks. Here's something for you guys to know. There is all this hype about this creatine nitrate, creatine malate, creatine this, creatine that. There is no better source of creatine than basic, plain old creatine monohydrate. They've tested them over and over again. Now, you asked me about creatine alkaline. Crealkaline.
Yeah.
What creatine alkaline is, very simply, is creatine combined with baking soda.
Right? Oh, really?
Yeah, that's all it is.
In a tablet?
That's it. Well, the tablet or in a powder.
Yeah,
right?
I get it in purple tablets.
Right. So what it does is...
Wait a minute, I know what you're going to tell me.
What?
Can I at least guess?
Go ahead.
The baking soda settles the acid in your stomach.
Yes, exactly. That's the basis for it. You're a smart guy.
I'm a very smart guy.
Here's your diploma.
I went to Catholic.
No. The thing is, the theory behind crealkaline, which was actually developed by a guy who used to work at Gold's Gym.
Really?
A guy named Jeff Golan, yeah. The thing about crealkaline is that the theory is that when you take creatine, a large amount, because the stomach produces acid, especially when you eat protein.
Yeah.
You stimulate acid production, so the thought is that when you take creatine, because it's a protein byproduct, the acid is going to degrade the creatine, basically destroying it. So if you take the creatine with a buffer like the crealkaline, it will maintain the creatine and be absorbed. Now the problem is, when they've tested this, they found that A, it's not any better absorbed than regular creatine, and B, even worse, it's less absorbed, because after 30 minutes, a large percentage of the crealkaline is turned into creatinine, which is the main, what you call waste product of creatine metabolism. So it's not that it's a bad product, you're still getting some creatine out of it. Because you have to understand, anything you take with creatine, whether it's attached to creatine, remember the creatine ethyl ester stuff, all that stuff is disassociated. It becomes just regular creatine as soon as it gets in the body. Now that ethyl ester stuff, that was popular for a while. They were saying that it has a completely different absorption. They tested that, and there's the same effect. Again, it was broken down rapidly into creatinine, making it virtually worthless. In fact, that stuff was actually developed originally to study how fast creatine breaks down.
Well, let me ask you a question. When you go in for like I went in for I had my kidney. I have one kidney.
Right.
And
I brought this for you, by the way. You'll see in a second.
the SGOT levels and the creatinine were higher.
Right.
Now, the creatinine has anything to do with creatine?
Yes.
It does?
Yes.
Okay.
Remember, creatinine is the byproduct.
Because there are two different spellings.
Right. There is.
The creatinine and creatine.
Okay.
Unless they pronounce it differently.
Well, to pronounce it differently, it's actually the same thing.
Okay.
I call it creatinine.
Okay, so
right?
the creatine in your kidney elevated would be from taking creatine as well?
Right. Here's the way it works. Creatinine is a kidney test, right?
Okay.
Now, normally the blood level of creatine is kept in a very, very narrow range. And if it goes out of the range, especially if it goes higher, that's indication that your body is losing protein. And that's an indication that your kidneys, there's something wrong with them. Something is not working in the kidneys. And it's a warning sign to doctors, right? Now, what happens, here's how it relates to creatine. When you take normal dosage of the creatine, when I say normal, I mean 5 grams, which is a teaspoon. That's what you would take for a loading dose. A loading dose would be 5 grams about 5 times a day, 20 grams a day for 5 to 7 days. And then after that, you do a maintenance dose, which is 2 to 3 grams of creatine. Here's the answer. If you take the 2 or 3 grams or 5 grams of creatine, there's no effect on the creatinine, right? Now, let's say that you're on a loading dose of 20 grams a day of creatine, and let's say the next day you go to have a blood test done, you're going to show elevated creatinine, and if you don't tell the doctor that you're on creatine, he might even suggest a biopsy.
Yeah.
Where they take a bit of your kidney tissue.
I know, that's what I was
aiming
at.
So my point to listeners is, or the watchers, you guys are watchers or listeners? Anyway.
Viewers.
Yeah, viewers. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got the wrong word. Anyway, the point is that if you are taking a creatine load and you have a blood test done, let's say within the first 2 days after you've done that load, make sure you tell the doctor that you're using a large amount of creatine so he'll know that there's nothing wrong with your kidneys, right?
Okay, yeah.
And by the way, I just add real quick, the creatine load, it's been around for years, since the 90s. It's kind of questionable, and I'll tell you why. Because first of all, your body only makes 1 gram of creatine. It's made in the liver, kidney, and pancreas. 1 gram. Usually you get just under a gram from food if you eat red meat, right? That's the main source of creatine in food, right? Now, what they found when they actually measured the creatine, and when you do a load, it turns out that, let's say you take 20 grams a day, it turns out that 30% of that amount is actually retained in the muscle, right? That means that 70% is excreted out. It's turned into creatine, it's excreted out, right? So if you add it all up, if you just take, let's say, 5 grams a day for 30 days, at the end of 30 days, you'll have the same amount of creatine in your muscle as if you did a 1-week load, but with much less wastage. Because after the first 2 days of a creatine load, most of it is broken down into creatine. Because you have to understand, once a muscle has a certain amount of creatine, it's like filling up a glass of water. If you continue to pour water, what happens?
Spills out.
The water, maybe I'll do a Bruce Lee. You have to turn into water. You have to become water. No, that's it. Anyway, the thing is,
like water. You follow the path.
what happens when you pour into a glass? No.
So anyway, the creatine actually fills out the muscle.
Yeah, it fills out the muscle. Now you mentioned the kidney. Now I know that you have 1 kidney, right?
Yeah.
And that's another major.
The other one's on eBay.
Is it?
No.
How much? Well, let me have this.
No, they might not want to pay for it.
Anyway, so here it is. No, Jack the Ripper ate it. No, anyway, the thing is, that's the other major thing. Remember, we talked about how the waste product of creatinine, has to go through excreted by the kidney. So, a lot of people sat back and said, well, wait a minute. If the waste product goes through the kidneys, couldn't that possibly cause kidney damage, right? And sure enough, there's about 3 or 4 cases in the medical literature of guys that took, creatine, and sure enough, their measurement of kidney function called the glomerular filtration rate. That measures how effective the kidneys are at filtering the blood, right? It kind of like changed in a negative sense, right? So they use that as evidence of kidney stress induced by creatine, right? But there were problems. First of all, in one case, the guy was taking not 20 grams a day, he was taking up to 40 grams a day of creatine, right?
Yeah.
So that is a stress on the kidneys,
sure,
right?
It's a lot.
And in the second case, the guy had severe kidney damage. So, but the guys who did the research didn't realize just how bad his kidneys were.
Yeah.
So they attributed the change in the GFF, they attributed to creatine, when in fact, almost any protein would have caused the same change, not necessarily creatine. So I came across this study, which I brought, and this kind of really ends the question of creatine causing kidney once and for all. This is from the American Journal of Kidney Disease, published in 2010. Now listen, I'm just going to read some real quick highlights. This is a young man. He had a single kidney and a mildly decreased glomerular filtration rate. In other words, this guy already had, he had one kidney and it was already showing signs of kidney stress.
Yeah.
So now you say to yourself, now, wait a minute, this is one guy who really should not be on creatine.
Right.
Right? It's a stress, right? Now, here's what they did. Listen to this. He had undergone and presented with, he went on 35 days of creatine supplementation. He took 20 grams a day for 5 days, followed by 5 grams a day for the next 30 days, and he had his kidney function monitored. Now here's what happened. Sure enough, the creatinine level, because he took that much creatine, as we know, it goes up when you're on the creatine level. It was slightly increased, falsely suggesting kidney function impairment. This is right on the study. The prospective report suggests that short-term creatine supplementation may not affect kidney function in an individual with a single kidney, mild decreased GFR, and also he was ingesting a high-protein diet. He was ingesting 2.8 grams of protein per kilogram. That's way above the suggested amount. The upper ceiling for bodybuilders is usually about 1.7 grams a day.
Right, I know that.
And this guy was taking it 2.8. And protein, anyone who has kidney disease, they are advised to eat a lower protein intake because protein doesn't pose a stress.
It does.
And yet here's a guy with one kidney, already showed a little bit of kidney damage, and yet he was eating a tremendous amount of protein, taking a creatine load, no stress on the kidneys at all. None.
So we just suggest that people can take it?
Yes, absolutely.
Will it make a big difference in their training?
Oh my God! It increases. You get about a 20% increased storage in the thing. It increases. It increases what they call anaerobic effectiveness. I think the figure is about 20%. It doesn't sound like a lot.
Yeah.
But it is. In the workouts, it's a tremendous.
20% is quite a bit.
Right, and creatine works best if you eat meat regularly, because meat's the best source of creatine. You're actually automatically loading your muscles with creatine.
Right.
So the people that creatine honestly works best for are vegetarians who eat no meat. In fact, creatine works so well for them that not only does it make their muscles much more efficient, but some studies show it actually increases their thinking ability. It almost acts like a smart drug, but it only happens in vegetarians. Yeah. Because remember, they start out with a very...
I'm not a vegetarian, I'm a vaginitarian.
A vaginitarian, yeah, that's a good
It's a different theory.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about your newsletter real quick. Okay. We're going to close out. And where can we get the newsletter?
The newsletter is at www.appliedmetabolics.com.
Okay, I'll put this up there.
Right now, I have now 5 issues online, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to read all of these, but this is just some of the things like I've covered in past issues. Does creatine cause venous thrombosis? That's basically blood clots. I have preparing for natural bodybuilding. From a nutrition, that's all the nutritional things you need to know. What is the relationship between low carb diets and fatigue? Do you have to do hours of aerobics? How can you treat depression, mental depression, with nutrition alone?
Yeah.
Right. I have a program in there, a dental program that I use myself, that basically eliminates all dental disease, all gum disease, cavities, and it will save somebody thousands of dollars in dental bills. It's fantastic. Are there estrogens in food supplements? I talk about that. The long-term effects of, there's a comparison between bodybuilders who took steroids for years and bodybuilders who took no steroids. What's the difference? What happens in the long term?
Right.
See, there's not a lot of information about it.
There's good stuff in there.
Yeah, and then I have a huge article on how to boost exercise recovery and reduce muscle damage. Now think about that. That's a tremendous, everything known nutritionally that'll help that. Then I talk about it. There's a new fat loss substance. They discovered a thing in certain foods that knocks out your appetite and causes fat loss better than any drug on the market. It's found naturally in foods.
The only thing about that is I don't like to curb my appetite.
Yeah.
I like to lose body fat, but I still want to eat.
Right.
You got to eat.
Well, you're different. Because you work out and stuff.
Yeah.
This would be like for somebody. There's some people though. They just get so voraciously hungry, especially the people that don't work out as much, that they can't diet at all. They last a day and then they're done. They go on a binge, and this is the kind of stuff this kind of thing would help them. because it's a natural substance that has no side effects. It doesn't cut out the appetite completely, but it lowers it. And here's the interesting thing. What I thought was really, sorry, I mean to poke you there. The really interesting thing, I'm not poking them. The really interesting thing about this substance is it reduces your cravings mainly for high glycemic simple carbs. That's the worst thing, as we both know.
Exactly.
It doesn't reduce your appetite for protein and good fats.
Yeah.
But for some reason, you have less of an appetite to eat like junky carb foods. That's what this stuff does. And in the last issue, I discussed the big thing about. Did you hear about those studies where they said that they came up with some studies saying
we have to close out.
okay, testosterone causes cardiovascular disease.
Yeah.
I clear that up, but that's the kind of stuff I've covered.
Oh, that's
so
good.
so I mean, I guarantee anyone who reads this newsletter will learn a ton of information, and they'll be way ahead of the curve. Let me put it that way.
AppliedMetabolics.com.
Right.
So it's on my video. You can click on it, and you can go. It's $10 a month, which is nothing. So you give up coffee one day.
Yeah.
It's worth it for you.
Yeah. What is that? Like one coffee at the what's the name of the place?
Starbucks?
Yeah.
And one latte?
Yeah. Like two lattes.
Oh, jeez, yeah. Well, thank you, Jerry, for coming.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll have you on again. We'll do more and more
Okay.
and more. And there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for watching and becoming viewers of Rick's Corner. It's always a thrill to start the new year with Jerry and a few of the other guys I've had on here. And stay tuned for more. We'll be back next week.
It's rickdrasin.com. He is the equalizer, baby. See you next time.